Right, hello and welcome to this conversation event with the artists in the Platform Graduate Award 2020 exhibition at Aspex. My name is Vicky Fear and I'm the Curator Programme Manager at Aspex in Portsmouth. We are broadcasting and recording this on Sunday the 27th of September 2020 and we'll be sharing the recording on YouTube. So hopefully you can see quite a few of the artists that are in the show on our Zoom gallery view. We have 12 artists in the exhibition, and although unfortunately not all of them have been able to join this conversation, I will be briefly introducing the work of all 12 before opening up a conversation with the artists who are present. I am very mindful of timekeeping and not making this an unbearably long session, so I'll be aiming to keep well within an hour and a half, including time for any questions from the audience. I know that rereading a pre-prepared script is a bit naff, but I don't want to ramble on or forget something important, and I do want to include all of the artists who have joined us, so I've rewritten quite a bit of this out in advance. If you are watching live via Zoom, you can type questions for later into the Q&A pop-up box at the bottom of the Zoom page by clicking on the icon. And as we are recording, you can ask a question anonymously if you would prefer. The chat function is also available, but please be mindful that lots of chat can be quite distracting for myself and the artists. Before I started speaking, we had a rolling slideshow of photos of the platform exhibition. The show is free to visit Wednesday to Sunday, 11 AM to 4 PM between now and the 20th of December. For full info about visiting the gallery, please see the Know Before You Go page in the visit section of our website, which is aspex.org.uk. For anyone unable to see myself and the artists, I'm a white woman in my 30s with long brown hair sitting in the staff office at Aspex. And I'll describe the artists who are on the Zoom call as I introduce them and will give a visual description of their work installed in the gallery. We are currently in discussion with artist Jo Bresloff about how we might make one of our regular touch tours for blind and visually impaired people happen remotely. If you'd like to know more about that, please get in touch by emailing or calling the gallery during opening hours. So that's all the housekeeping. I'm going to introduce each of the 12 exhibiting artists and their work before opening up the conversation. I should also mention that some of the artists have met online before, as we had a couple of Zoom get-togethers last weekend, and I'm really happy for the artists to ask each other questions when we get to that point later on, so you may see them making notes as we go. Right, let me try another screen share. Let's give this a go. I'm having slight technical difficulties today, but hopefully we will manage this. Sorry, just getting it up. Nice and big. How's that? Okay, can you all see that? Can I have a nod from Emma? Yeah, you see platform? Great, okay, good. We're going to start with Daniel Martirossian. Oh, I've lost my thing. Okay, Daniel's unable to turn his camera on this evening. Daniel is a white man with dark hair in his early 20s, but as I say, you won't be able to see him at the moment. Daniel has 2 drawings in platform and they are installed at the entrance to the gallery facing you as you enter the building. The drawings, Max on the right and right side profile on the left, trying to make that move on one, there we go, are installed, oh I've lost my thing. Sorry, I'm trying to do too many technical wizardry things here. Okay, they are photorealistic portraits in charcoal on paper, 122 centimetres square. And beneath each portrait is a panel of smaller drawings showing the same sitter from different angles and in extreme close-up, also in charcoal. Daniel, could you please unmute and say hello and where you graduated from?
Hello, yes, so sorry about not having my profile picture up, technical difficulties on my computer, but I originally graduated from the University of Chichester.
Great. Daniel, how long does it take you to make one of the large portrait drawings?
These portrait drawings, on average, I'd say they took about 3 to 4 days. I spent a lot of hours in the studios working on them. I actually would come in normally at 9 o'clock in the morning and then work my way through until 7 p.m. normally.
Long days.
Yeah, the time just flies by though when I'm really in it and just drawing. The time just flies by.
Yeah, I bet it does. And do you use charcoal exclusively, or do you ever use other mediums like paint or I don't know, ink or anything?
I've experimented with different mediums such as painting and using ink or pastels as well. But I think from trying a lot of things out and having group critiques, the general consensus was that black and white charcoal seemed to prove most effective for what I wish to convey in my own work. So that's why I stuck with black and white charcoal mainly.
Great. Daniel, later on, I'd like to talk more about your kind of interest in portraying truth through portraiture. I think it's really interesting. But we're going to come back to that later on. And for now, can you remute, please?
Yep.
Thank you. So next up is Kayleigh Davies. That's already checked beforehand in advance. Kayleigh is a white woman with blonde hair in her early 20s, wearing some fabulous dangly earrings and headphones. Kayleigh, could you please unmute to say hello, where you graduated from and where you are right now?
Hi everyone, I graduated from the University of Chichester and at the moment I am in Bournemouth.
Cool, thank you. Kayleigh's work in the exhibition is first on the left as you enter the gallery, and it consists of two slightly larger than life-size oil paintings on canvas showing two standing nudes, which are composites of studies of multiple women's bodies. And each of the paintings are also accompanied by a piece of audio. Kayleigh, could you please tell us the titles of those paintings and briefly describe what we hear in the audio for each one?
Yeah, of course. So on the left is the back piece. I don't know if on the left is on the back piece, and it's called There's Some Parts I Like About My Body. And then on the right is one of my first paintings, which is The Conversation with Our Women. And sorry, what was the other question?
Could you describe what we hear in the audio?
Oh, in the audio. So in the audio, you hear edited voices of the models that are in the paintings. I think it's really important to hear how the models in the paintings are feeling about their bodies as I have composed them. So yeah, you hear a lot of different viewpoints of how people feel about their bodies. Yeah.
Well, and do you paint from life or photographs or a sort of combination of the two?
A combination of the two. I'll try and do as much life drawing as I can. However, with these very large paintings, doing it from life would be probably agonizing for the models, and so I try and take photos to help with that, and also I edit the photos in Photoshop just so I can, get the right compositions.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Kayleigh. Lots more to discuss, but oh no. I don't know how I can do that. Reject that. Whoop. I'm so sorry. This is the one problem with doing this in the office. But if I was at home, you would hear my neighbours. So hopefully someone will stop phoning the gallery any minute now. Okay. Why are they phoning at this time of night? There's one more photo of Kayleigh's lovely work. If anybody knows who's phoning the gallery, please tell them to stop. And then I'm going to move on to talking about Caitlin Jackson's work. They are very determined. Okay, Caitlin Jackson's work is installed next to Chloe's in the gallery. Caitlin is wearing glasses. She's a white woman with blonde hair in her early 20s. Could you please unmute, say hello, and say where you studied and where you are right now?
Hello. I studied at Farnham University of Creative Arts, and I'm currently at home in Woking.
Great, thank you. Caitlin's artwork is titled Now You See Me. It consists in the gallery of 3 QR codes printed on acetate hanging slightly away from the wall. And scanning the QR codes with a mobile device takes you to interactive filters on Instagram, which use your camera to show images of the bacteria swabbed from 3 locations. Caitlin, could you please say what those 3 locations are and why you chose them?
So the top one is workshop tools that were in our university. That one is the light switch, I think, or I think it's a light switch. And the bottom one is the soap dispenser from a common bathroom. And I chose these because I was looking for commonly touched objects that you don't really think too much about when you go and touch them, and to try and show you what is actually living on them.
Yeah, so I've used a picture there that you had on your Instagram that kind of shows you what sort of happens when you use the filters with your camera. Great. The work is so timely in the current context of a coronavirus. But could you say why you started making this work and why you were interested in the idea of spread?
So I really love sci-fi, and I really was looking at sort of these unknown objects that are familiar to us. And I thought, what better way to do them than to go on a microscopic sort of level? And in order to do that, I would grow my own bacteria from these objects to sort of reveal an invader that is always around us, really. And I just became a bit obsessed with how different they would grow, or the patterns they would grow in, and taking photos of them. And then the reveal side of things, where you don't really know what it is, but when you find out where it came from, it's sort of a bit gross, but you learn something from it at the same time. So that was really my goal with the work.
Well, there's certainly more I want to ask you shortly, but for now, thank you. You remute. Next up, we have another Caitlin in the show, Caitlin Holford. Caitlin is a white woman in her 20s with brown hair. She also has an incredible colour-changing light in her bedroom that makes it look like she's in a disco. Caitlin, could you please unmute, say hello, say where and what you studied and where you are right now?
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I've just graduated from the University of Portsmouth, and I'm currently living just outside of Portsmouth.
Great, thank you. Caitlin's work in Platform is a series of 5 framed photographs installed in a single tall column. Let's find the right picture, there we go. The photographs, which are titled Alma Through Her Husband's Eyes, are actually self-portraits, but they show a fictional character, Alma, in a series of poses with food in a domestic setting. Caitlin is about 4 feet tall, and in the photos she is wearing a doll-like mask, a short blonde wig, red top, check skirt and white boots. Caitlin, could you please say where you shot the photos?
So the first 3 were done in my house. So, like, the first one was in my kitchen, second in dining room, third in living room. Then my 4th one was done in my neighbour's master bedroom, and the last one was done in my living room.
Brilliant. And you had a really clear idea about how you wanted to install them in the gallery. Could you explain why that was?
So my whole idea is basically repetition, and my theme is like food and repetition. So I sort of wanted to show a sort of narrative, And there isn't technically a narrative to this, but I've just sort of presented it in the way I shot it. So the first one is the one I shot first, basically, and so on. So I thought of doing it like link that way. I can't remember how you say it. But then I was just like, I'm not sure. I don't know. It didn't really like appeal to me. Then it just came to me just to do it downward, and I just thought that would work. And yeah, I just went from there. Really, it's kind of quite a basic story, but yeah, I just thought going down in the line just sort of showed like a real timeline and a sort of transition as well.
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. You can remute for now, and we'll speak to you again in a bit. So moving around the gallery walls in a clockwise direction, we next have Maryam Zahra Kazimi's work. Maryam should be there. She is an Asian woman in her 20s wearing a headscarf. Maryam, could you please unmute, say hello, and say where you graduated from and where you are right now?
Hi Vicky and everyone who is watching / participating. My name is Maryam. I graduated from University of Southampton, Winchester School of Art, and I'm currently in my brother's bedroom in London.
Great, thank you. Maryam's work is titled J'ai perdu mon torse, which translates as I lost my chest. It's a large line drawing of a cartoonish figure lacking a torso in blue oil pastel on an 8x4 foot board of ply, leaning seemingly casually against the wall. Maryam, could you please tell us where and in brief why you made this drawing?
Sure. I don't know if you actually know this, Vicky, you might, but I made this drawing when I was based out of a bathtub in my studio for a couple of months. And I'd just come back from an exchange program in Paris. And I'd had a really rough time with kind of housing and like finding a place for the duration of time that I was out there, which was approximately 8 months. And I guess I was kind of feeling like frustrated. I didn't really, my kind of practice was, I guess kind of in a weird parallel to COVID, my practice was kind of forced to become very small scale without access to kind of a permanent studio and permanent place of residence. And yeah, it was, I guess, my kind of reassertion of my practice when I came back to university in the UK. So I kind of decided, you know what, there's 1 year left of art school, just go big or go home. And I was just like, I'm getting a bathtub, I'm going to do some really big, crazy, fun stuff. And that was, yeah.
Right. You've shown this work in a couple of installations, haven't you? And could you describe like how you installed it before?
Sure. Okay, briefly, in brief.
Yeah, brief.
So I think previously it's been installed, I forgot the word too, Caitlin, vertically, I think. Yeah, kind of just leaning against the wall. I guess kind of going off of what I was just saying, I decided to hold a bunch of exhibitions within the art school with some mates who went on exchange and like random other people on the course. And yeah, we just held a bunch of these impromptu exhibitions, and this guy found himself in that space.
Always kind of leaning casually.
Yeah. Oh, actually, he was also displayed in a church hall. We had a kind of symposium with a bunch of artists on our course as well. And I think I think there's a really weird parallel between the kind of journey of this piece of work and its like transitions, like through spaces, and the kind of concept of it not having a base, you know, that kind of displacement. There's a weird parallel there. I'm not sure that answers your question, sorry.
It does, thank you. We've certainly got more to talk about, and your practice is far from exclusively drawing, which I'm keen to discuss kind of multidisciplinary practice later. But for now, if you could remute. Thank you. Next to Maryam's work in the gallery are Evie Redwood's prints and accompanying QR codes. Evie is a white woman in her 20s with blonde hair and glasses. Evie, could you please unmute, say hello, and say where you graduated from and where you are right now?
Yes, hi. I graduated from Arts University Bournemouth, and and I am still in Bournemouth now as well.
Great, thank you. Evie's artwork is titled Key Staff. It's presented in the gallery as a grid of 9 blue screen prints on blue paper. Oh, I've lost my script. Alongside a corresponding grid of 9 semi-fluorescent green QR codes on white paper. And scanning the QR codes with a mobile or tablet device directs you to pages on the Key Staff website, which was designed and built by Evie. Evie, could you please describe what people are listening to when they play the audio files on that site?
Yes, so they're listening to the sound of labour from the key staff at the institution that I was part of at Arts University Bournemouth. So the staff are cleaners, security and catering staff. Well, there's not actually catering staff in there, but it was to do with the outsourced work within the institution. So you're listening to the outsourced staff.
Brilliant, thank you. And could you please describe what's shown in the 9 prints on the wall?
Yes, and then the prints are material that the staff used regularly. So the work was recorded and made over 2 months spent working alongside the workers at the university. And from conversations with them, I asked them kind of what materials they use most regularly to perform their labour, and then collected some of those materials. And originally they were monoprints, but then I made them into screen prints later on for this exhibition.
Great, thank you, Evie. I'd really like to talk later on about how you've rethought the presentation of the work for Aspex.
Yes.
But for now, if you could remute yourself, please.
Yeah,
thank
sure.
you.
Thank you.
So, hanging on the brick walls between the windows in the main space at Aspex are 2 paintings by, oh, sorry, I should have shown that for Evie. Okay. 2 paintings by Megan Georgia Smith. Megan is a white woman in her early 20s with brown and blonde hair. Megan, could you please unmute, say hello and say where you studied and where you are right now?
Yeah, so I studied at Southampton Solent University, and I'm currently in Aldershot, Hampshire.
Cool, thank you. Megan is exhibiting 2 acrylic paintings on canvas in platform. It's quite a lot of description of Megan's work because there's so much detail. So starting off with this one, Chicken Shop. It's 197 centimetres wide by 160 centimetres tall. And it depicts the interior of a fast food restaurant. There are a number of characters such as staff, children in school uniforms, a policeman, a man with a dog, a young couple, some rats, lots of food on the floor. It's highly detailed and it shows the restaurant as having a level 1 food hygiene certificate, which I think is very important. Some details from it there. The second painting is a high street scene. In the background, there are shops, including a travel agent, a bookies, a clothes shop, and a shoe shop. In the middle, there's a market stall, people walking with shopping bags, children playing football, people sitting on a bench, lampposts with signs to fast food shops, trees strewn with litter, a woman with a pushchair and 4 children, and someone in kind of labelled sportswear on a bicycle. In the foreground, there are 2 people in military clothing and gold jewellery lighting cigarettes. And it's a painting that's 97 centimetres wide by 131 centimetres tall. Megan, could you please tell us the name of this painting, where it's based on and why you chose that location?
So this one's called Land of Milk and Honey, and it's of my hometown of Aldershot. And I wanted to paint Aldershot High Street because it's kind of like, it's not got a lot of shops there going on, but there's a lot of life there, I think, and I just wanted to capture that and bring it into like a gallery space.
You've done very well. Thank you, Megan. There's lots more I want to discuss with you, particularly around identity and self-portrait, which I think there's a lot of discussion with some of the other artists as well. But for now, if you could please remute yourself. I should have shown some more details from Land of Milk and Honey. There we go. Okay, moving on to Ellen Ball. Ellen's work is in the middle of the gallery between the work of the artists we've met so far. Ellen is a white woman in her early 20s. She's wearing a hat. Ellen, could you please unmute, say hello and say where you graduated from and where you are right now?
Yeah, my name's Ellen. I graduated from University for the Creative Arts in Farnham, and I'm currently in Dorking in Surrey.
Thank you. Ellen's installation is titled Everest, and it consists of 3 shortened step ladders, some red ropes and climbing equipment, some scattered rocks, and an outdated box-style monitor on the floor showing a short looping piece of video. Ellen, could you please describe what we see in that video and also how you gathered that footage?
Yeah, so the video is some edited found footage from various documentaries about Mount Everest, particularly of the people climbing Everest. And I've reversed the clips so it shows them walking backwards down the mountain, which I kind of wanted to do to make the point that my piece is about, which is sort of trying to capture the sublime moment and this kind of ironic twisting of that idea that to get the people to walk down, to kind of suggest that that capturing the sublime moment is sort of a pressure that's put upon us, a kind of an idea that we have to constantly achieve and succeed. So I wanted to kind of turn that the opposite way.
Thank you. We've also, you and I, not really talked much about the soundtrack in the video, and it plays this kind of howling wind. Would you mind talking about why you wanted to include that sound as part of the installation?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to give the impression of the environment, that the sound of the environment. I felt that when it was silent, it didn't have as much impact. And I wanted that effect so that with the ropes as well, you sort of felt a part of that world a little bit, and then had that kind of juxtaposition of these household objects around you as well.
Great, thank you. I want us to come back to that sense of pressure that you were talking about, and I think that's going to be something that a lot of the other artists have experienced as well in that kind of lead up to the end of the degree. So we'll come back to that and kind of discuss that as a group, I think. But until then, could you please? Oh, you've already done it. Remute. Great. So next, on the back of the wall, which Daniel's drawings are hanging on, we have a photographic series by Kayleigh Pyner. Kayleigh is a white woman in her 20s with long blonde hair. Kayleigh, could you please unmute, say hello, say where you are, where you studied and what you studied?
Hi, so I graduated from Southampton Solent University, and right now I'm currently in Leeds.
Cool, thank you. Kayleigh's photographs are titled Dilapidated Defences, and they feature the architectural ruins of military defences on Britain's southeast coastline. The 6 mounted prints are installed in a single row, equally spaced at head height. Kayleigh, were these sites that were already well known to you, or if not, how did you come across them if they weren't somewhere that you were visiting regularly?
None of them I'd ever visited before, but I'd done a lot of research into the whole year, and there's a lot of forums based around where war defences have been left. And I'd found like ones that are closer by and ones that are further away, and then it was just going to them places and then just finding where they all are.
Oh, great. And Kayleigh, are you interested in these sites purely as kind of landscape and architecture, or are you trying to communicate something more about the political context at the moment?
It is to do with landscape and architecture, but also with the whole like Brexit situation as well. It does touch upon that as well, but the main idea was landscape, but it does touch upon them subjects too.
And in your sort of statement, you describe how they hold these kind of memories, don't you, of events?
Yeah.
more to talk about, definitely. But for now, if you could remute, please.
Yeah.
And we'll talk further shortly. Oh, there's another picture of your work. Okay, next up, we've got Louise Hall. Louise is a Black woman with natural afro hair. She is in her 20s. I can't see Louise right now, but I'm guessing she's got a digital. Oh yeah, we've gone for stars. Love it. Louise always has really good backgrounds. So Louise, could you please unmute yourself, say hello, and say where you graduated from and where you are right now?
Hi, I've just graduated from Arts University Bournemouth, and I'm currently still in Bournemouth.
Great, thank you. So in the gallery, Louise's work is titled 13 Dead Nothing Said, and it consists of 13 fabric life-size dolls in a pile, trailing across the floor and up the wall towards a nearby window. The dolls are made from brightly coloured African wax print fabric and also feature cyanotypes and screen prints in the fabric. Louise, could you please describe some of the detail of that fabric and what you made the cyanotypes with?
Yeah, so with the detail of the fabric, there's bits of hair in it, which very caringly my brother had chopped off his dreadlocks and had let me use to make these cyanotype prints, and another friend had cut off her afro, and I kind of like, can I have this whole head of hair to do something with? So I was doing these cyanotypes with kind of these natural hair that I've still actually got in a bag in my room, and then I was doing like screen prints as well of like abstract hair drawings, which kind of blend into the African wax print fabric, so they kind of take over, which is really interesting. And I kind of like that balance of like human hair and this sense of blackness, which is in the African wax print fabric.
Thank you. Would you also mind describing kind of briefly the true story that the title and the work directly refers to?
Yes, of course. So the work refers to the New Cross Great Fire, which happened in the 80s, which unfortunately 13 young children they were having a birthday party. It was one of the girls' 16th birthday, and there was kind of an arson attack, but it's never really been concluded of like what has happened and why it went down. But there's lots of theories, and kind of at the time it was investigated but never kind of really came to light, and there was a mass kind of outpour by the African Caribbean community at the time, who then kind of marched to the slogan 13 Dead Nothing Said, which is kind of why the work is honouring these individuals and kind of speaking to like the loss of their life and kind of still questioning why nothing has been said and no answers have been given to their family members.
Thank you, Louise. I'd certainly like to talk more about your work in relation to social justice when we open up the conversation. But for now, could you please remute? Thank you. And I'm sure we'll see you with another fabulous background in a minute. So artist number 11 of 12 is Emma Siân Davies. Emma is a white woman in her 20s with light blonde hair, dangly earrings, and a very distinctive eyeliner flick. Emma, could you please unmute, say hello, say where you're from, where you graduated from, and where you are right now?
Hello everyone. Yeah, my name is Emma. I am currently living in Devon, but I went to university at the University of Southampton at Winchester School of Art. So yeah.
Thank you. Emma's working platform is a looping video piece with an audio soundtrack shown on a large flat screen wall-mounted monitor. It's 2 minutes 50 seconds long, and it's titled, well actually I've not checked this with you, but I'm presuming we call it Lockdown when we say it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it is.
It's spelt in a way that that's why I'm checking. Emma, the imagery and music in the work is very heavily influenced by Japanese culture. Could you please explain how the work also relates to Japanese philosophy?
Yes, well, there's a Japanese philosophy whereby everything is interconnected. So like as a human, like our soul, our spirit, our biology, our psychologies, and everything like that is connected as a whole. So I kind of like wanted to use my art to explore sort of questions about reality and the self when you put it into that context, and especially within technology, how that philosophy can then be extended to and applied to technology, and where does the boundary between sort of if everything is interconnected, is there a boundary between the self and technology, or are we a hybrid now, kind of thing? So yeah.
Super interesting. And do you exclusively work with video and technology, or during your degree have you made anything in kind of other more sort of handmade manual mediums?
I think as a hobby and using art as a medium of expression, I do like to use sort of more traditional methods like drawing and things like that. But I think as sort of it always then ends up progressing into becoming something digital, and I do always seem to go to the digital as my sort of preferred medium. I do make some things that are still, but mainly video. I think video is definitely the thing, because I'm so inspired so heavily by music. I am always wanting to create stuff that can in some ways incorporate my fascination with the audio as well as the visual.
Thank you, Emma. Our final artist, there's a couple of other pictures of Emma's work installed. There we go. Our final artist, Katie Novell, is unable to join us, unfortunately, due to tonsillitis. But here are a couple of pictures of her work installed in the gallery, and I will just describe them. Katie Novell's series of photographs are titled Image Bank, and they're framed and installed just inside the gallery on the right-hand side near Emma and Louise's work. The 4 images are seemingly generic stock-style photographs, and they're produced to emulate the multi-purpose aesthetic for kind of low-cost advertising. Each image is accompanied by a line of text, which both describes what is depicted above and supplies keywords which might be used to search for it in an online image bank. For example, a beautiful smiling girl model with natural makeup touching hydrated, clean skin. Katie is a University of Portsmouth BA photography graduate, and in this project she's been attempting to make the everyday look perfect while simultaneously critiquing the use of stock photography. And we hope you get better soon, Katie. So that's everybody's work introduced, so that hopefully we all now know a bit about what people are making, where they're coming from, and let's give this conversation a go with all of you. Thank you for being so patient and kindly listening to each other. You can now either unmute straight away, or if you're worried about background noise and you want to stay muted, remember to unmute before you speak. I'm going to nudge a couple of people to talk and respond to particular questions, but if you want to chip in or ask something or just get involved anytime, then please do. And I'm going to start by kind of rewinding back to Daniel and Chloe, who are both Chichester graduates and making portraits, but there are other artists interested in portraiture and identity too. So Caitlin, Holford, Maryam, Megan, Louise. Why are you all interested in portraiture? Perhaps we could start, Daniel, would you mind describing, you kind of talk about trying to capture a sense of truth that's unattainable in photographs.
Yes, I have for years always been interested in portraiture, and with using photographic images, I would always prefer trying to take pictures of my sitters when they're not really posing, and like convey more of a photographic truth instead of people trying to pose for the camera instead. And that's why with each sitter I would take hundreds of photographs, and they would just be talking. They wouldn't pose or anything, so it just could give a more natural representation that I wish to convey in my drawings.
So do you think people will kind of change or try and present, I don't know, like a best self or something if it was like a single picture?
Yes, definitely that would happen. think. So that's why I would take just lots of images instead of just one for that purpose.
Yeah. Do you find that, Chloe, when you're painting, are people very self-conscious, and or does it feel really important to put people at ease in some way?
Yeah, definitely. Which is one of the reasons why I added audio in with my work to create an installation. I'd want my models to trust me and to kind of have that relationship where they're more open, because my work is about being open with your body and kind of owning your body. So yeah, a few people have been quite reserved, and some people have also, when taking photos, have reverted to like modeling kind of poses. So I try to have that kind of conversation with them to begin with, to kind of like just say like, I'm interested about you and your body and the real you. So yeah.
Seems to be really important, is that relationship rather than a perfect image for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Caitlin Holford, you sort of fell into doing self-portraiture. Do you want to give a bit of the story of that, and how have you found that different than working with a model?
So I sort of fell into self-portraiture from my last project called Glow, and it kind of happened where my model couldn't come, and my friend was helping me, he was a guy, and I was like, I kind of only want it to be like an all girls project. So I was like, okay, I don't have anybody who can get last minute, so I was like, I'll just use myself. So I started using myself, and I was like, actually this is really easy. It's kind of easier because you don't have to rely on anybody else, you just literally just take pictures of yourself. And it was like the only thing I find difficult is sort of setting up the camera and sort of making sure everything's in focus. And I have to it's different from in the studio, because obviously in the studio it's like, once the lighting is set, you just literally set up the camera and that's it. But when you don't have like good lighting or stuff, you have to like really make sure everything's perfect working from home. So when I was in the studio, I would put like a mirror behind the camera so I could see in the viewfinder every time the shutter went off if I was like central or not. So when I did that at home, it was quite difficult. So I did have to like sort of get my parents to help me just make sure everything was like aligned and everything. So I like it to be very like central and perfect, and a bit of a perfectionist, so it has to be perfect. So yeah, it was sort of, I personally find it easier doing myself, but at the same time making sure everything's correct is challenging. Yeah.
Megan, do you primarily work from like your imagination and kind of memory? Because there's like, you are in one of your photos, aren't you? And
yeah, I'm in both of them.
Oh, you're in both?
Yeah.
I think I might have worked out who you are in Land of Milk and Honey. I knew who you were in Chicken Shop. You're by the grill, right?
Yeah, because I used to work on the fryers in the chicken shop.
And in Land of Milk and Honey, are you in school uniform?
I'm in a red and black stripy top.
Oh.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't know that if you didn't know like what my sister looked like, because I'm standing with my sister as well, and we're like holding charity shop bags.
Okay, I know who you mean now. And are there other real people in your paintings that you know other than your sister?
Yeah, I try to do like my friends base a lot of my characters. I base a lot of my characters around, I think. Particularly the lads are inspired by like my boyfriend quite a lot of the time. And yeah, like the fashions that my social sort of circle wear, yeah, that kind of all inspires me.
So interesting that I think Daniel and Chloe, you're trying to really get this very kind of pure truth in your images, whereas for Caitlin it's almost the opposite. It's this kind of artifice, it's this perfect image, and for Megan it's this exaggeration, isn't it? that really it's not exactly as it is. You know, there are things that you're drawing on from life, but it's very much kind of pointing the finger at people, saying, you know, you've got us wrong, or you're making judgments, and that's not necessarily real life. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think my work's quite cynical, but it's not necessarily kind of judging and kind of pointing the finger. That's why I kind of put myself in the scene as well, to show that I'm like connected to the chaos. But like the idea kind of behind using stereotypes is to kind of, because it's like an easily grasped form of representation, but I am kind of critiquing that in a way of showing just how ridiculous these stereotypes are, like, because my paintings come across like absurd when you look at them, but there is also truth there. So yeah. Yeah, I've lost my train of thought.
No, that's all good. That's all good. Maryam, your self-portrait does not look like you. And in your other work, particularly your kind of script writing, there are characters that are based on people you know and yourself, but you use different names. So is that kind of anonymity and kind of renaming really important to you?
I'm not sure I actually have renamed the characters. I think they pretty much all directly correspond to the people that they're based off of, or the, you know,
they
the
correspond,
people.
you don't use their actual names.
No, I have. But they don't know that necessarily I've written a screenplay featuring them.
Oh, I thought this was knowledge. I didn't know it was a secret.
I think this kind of concept of the lads that Megan was referring to is quite interesting. I've been, like, maybe in my reading kind of looking a lot at kind of identity and male friendships and how that's documented or expressed. Yeah, so I don't know about the anonymity. I think the anonymity comes from perhaps there being more to do with kind of having an esoteric audience. So there are kind of different levels to the interpretation or reading or understanding of it. So ideally, I would hope, you know, the unindoctrinated reader or viewer or audience would be able to kind of take something from it. The person who knows that, oh, this is me, and has kind of seen, like, backdoor how the whole thing has been constructed, they will have a very different appreciation. There might be people who will read it and be like, oh, that guy's got the same name as me, without realizing at all that, in fact, that character is entirely inspired by them. Bit creepy. But yeah, I don't remember what the question was. Was it about self-portraiture? Okay, yeah, so the guy doesn't look like me. Yeah.
That's fine.
I mean, I guess it was more kind of the expression of an experience, and I guess, like, when you look at kind of art in general, there's a kind of universal ability to engage with different concepts and relate to things based on your subjective experiencing of life, or, you know, visual languages. And I guess it was more it was less about the kind of image representation of reality as expression and sentiment, if that makes sense.
Does.
Yeah.
It does. Louise, your dolls, they're representing real people, but they're still unnamed in your work, and is that an intentional decision?
Yes and no. So I think when I was planning to exhibit kind of earlier on in this year, instead of, like, writing a blurb to, like, explain the work so much, it was just like a list of names, which was, like, quite stark, because I found it really interesting when I first kind of came upon this in a lecture, and was, like, going, okay, and looking at, like, all the death dates being pretty much in the same, like, week or like a lot of them are on the same day, and it's like it makes it very stark, and you work out, it's like, oh, that person's like 15 or that, and then you're like, okay, what was I doing at that age? And I know I was like probably like running around like at school and working hard, like that was my lived experience. So like not to then develop from there was like quite like something about people dying and people dying young is really like horrific. So I think that was kind of the language, but I chose for this, in this exhibition, not to maybe give that and let people kind of work more towards that, and like just kind of experience this idea of death and this idea of memorializing and having like a funeral for these people. And they 13 of them in this show, but there's a 14th person in real life that did die, but they took their life like a kind of year or two after the event, because of what had happened and how many people they had lost. So it's kind of, we're memorializing these 13, but there is a 14th kind of person in this situation and in this kind of story, unfortunately.
And your work more broadly is kind of referencing much broader issues around Black British experience and colonial histories and these really traumatic events. When did you start making work that has such kind of personal and political resonance as well?
I think I started kind of making really political work at like the end of my first year, when I was kind of really starting to unpack what it was to be mixed race and like my history and like how it's all kind of tangled together and how I saw myself, but like interested in both sides of the history and like making sure how I represented myself was like equal to who I was and like my family, my history. And I think definitely events that I kind of had led up to that were like people saying things and microaggressions and people making comments. And I kind of, the first political work I made was like a massive 3-meter wall just with like all these comments that had been said in collage form and just like put it out there. And I was like, oh, I really like this idea of like language and converting how these experiences were making me feel into something. And I kind of just developed from there. And I'm really interested in like language and collage. So that comes across in my work, like through printmaking, like collaging things together has like been a staple of my work over the last 3-4 years, which is, yeah, hope to carry on.
Nice. Evie, you're also interested in social justice, or this work certainly feels. Yeah. Could you talk about your work and why you became really interested in the working conditions for staff at AUB?
Yeah, so I think it's actually important to say as well that the work was named Key Staff and made before the coronavirus lockdown, and you know that key staff, key workers has been used so much since, and you know these workers have been, their labour's been really highlighted since coronavirus because you know they were on the front line basically. But beforehand, I was thinking about Arts University Bournemouth as an institution, and my position as a student within that institution. I've always been really interested in labour and working conditions, and I was thinking a lot about kind of my situation as a student and the fact that, you know, who keeps this space clean, who comes in and cleans the studios, you know, who keeps the gallery white basically. And then I just decided to start speaking to the workers, that, you know, the security, the cleaners and the catering staff, and kind of found out from speaking to them very quickly that they're all outsourced to private companies, so they don't actually work for the university, which then kind of led me on to thinking more about their labour and what being outsourced actually means for them. And then it kind of became a critique of the university. So yeah.
And did you say last week that their contracts and that kind of whole setup has changed since?
Yeah, from what I know. So I've been back to speak to them since finishing university, and the contracts changed. So I think it works out that they have the university buys a contract for maybe like 3 or 5 years. I can't remember the exact number, and then the contract goes up for bidding. And then that kind of all happened before lockdown, I think, and they've now changed to a different company, which then gives them kind of better working conditions, securer contracts. I mean, obviously it's not as secure as working for the university itself, but I think the conditions are better from the people that I spoke to. I mean, I can't talk for all of them, but yeah, I think it's improved, hopefully.
Speaking of change, we had to totally rethink your work for the show at Aspex, because it was previously a 24-hour broadcast, and here it's presented as print. So could you describe that work as it was a few months ago before coming into Aspex?
Yeah, so initially before COVID, it was supposed to be a sound installation with like speakers all around a room, and then it changed after lockdown when I started having to work from home to be an online work. So then it was a 24-hour sound broadcast, and then it changed again because I wanted to exhibit physically rather than it just solely being online. So although it's part online at the moment, I wanted to have the prints as well. So when it was online, it was 24-hour broadcast, which was kind of, there were 9 sound works that were available for an hour and a half over set times over the 24-hour period, because I was interested in the security are there 24 hours a day, and the cleaners come in from 10 until 3 at night. So I wanted to kind of play the sounds when their labour was actually happening as well. And then it changed again, obviously, to be screen prints for this exhibition. Yeah, so it's changed loads, but it's been a nice progression. I think it's been fun to experiment with it.
Really interesting. I expect for you as an artist, sort of working out how you show your work, and
yeah.
I know quite a few of you, well, all of everybody have been massively impacted by COVID-19, and but particularly for you as a group of artists that are kind of making your work into the final moment of your degree. So I think we should talk a bit about that and what that's been like. Kayleigh, you'd hoped to do a bit more travel, hadn't you, for shooting your photos?
Yeah, I had quite a lot planned to go more up the coast, up north, because one of the photos is from Kilnsey in East Yorkshire, and I just wanted to travel and try and get as many different defences I could get and everything, but I was only able to capture what I could before lockdown happened.
So a pretty massive effect on what you had kind of to pick from to do your final selection and edit.
Yeah, so I had everything done on film as well, so I had to quickly rush down as like talks of lockdown happened. I'd just done a shoot up in East Yorkshire, so I had to rush down to Southampton, basically quickly develop all my film and scan everything in, and then I left pretty much a couple of days later, and that was it.
Gosh. And Megan, Chicken Shop was locked in the studio. We nearly didn't get to show Chicken Chop.
Yeah, that would have been bad. Yeah, me and my dad like went down there on the designated day that we could get there.
After lockdown?
Yes. Oh no, it was during. No, it must have been after like the initial like strict lockdown, and we didn't quite fit it in the van. It was like poking out the back of the van, my dad's van, and we had to like cable tie the doors together going down the motorway, so like it didn't come out the back. But yeah, I managed to get it finished in time for the show.
That's good. I'm so pleased that you got it finished in time for the show here, because it looks amazing. Emma, your work, of course, is about lockdown.
Yeah.
So at what point did you kind of decide, because I'm presuming you had other ideas about work that you were going to make?
Yeah.
Shifted.
Yeah, so in March, it was like the 20th of March, I had my plane booked to go to Japan for a month, where I where I had loads of plans to get loads of footage and sort of like heighten my knowledge of Japan and Japanese, because I was heavily influenced by language and linguistics and stuff like that initially, because I started learning Japanese a few years ago and got really intrigued by sort of the idea of the untranslatable and how like philosophies and words can't be translated into something like across different native cultures and stuff, like things like that. But yeah, so I was going to go to Japan and get a lot of like inspiration and make films. And so yeah, when I couldn't do that, I ended up just still sticking to the same sort of stylistic choices and same sort of technological methodology and things like that, but I just, instead of doing it about Japan, I took my influence from the previous work I'd been sort of like looking into, and then just did it about my experience and probably the collective experience of lockdown instead. So yeah, because I think, yeah, it is kind of like sort of in some ways it's sort of like indicative of myself, and a lot of it, there's many images and symbols that are completely exclusive to me but in my film, but then also I think I say it's exclusive to me, but how exclusive to me can it be when we're all living in lockdown? And probably loads of everyone else on here probably can sort of resonate with some of the symbols I used, and like the games and the banana bread and things like that. So yeah, etc. But yeah, so that's how it kind of changed.
The wine nights on Zoom.
Yeah, the wine nights on Zoom, that was a heavy like influence. Yeah, the aliens dancing.
Yeah. We
That
got
was
kitchen discos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it definitely did like massively impact my work, the lockdown. Like I didn't realize how much it was impacting it, because I was making work without actually thinking about it being like something that I gave in as like a final major project thing. And then suddenly I was like, wait, but I'm actually creating lots of stuff now. So I kept going and stuff. So yeah.
Good to hear. Caitlin Jackson, your work has become so poignant in relation to COVID. Does that interest you, or is it potentially a kind of misinterpretation of your work? Because like a big part of your kind of research is around like antibiotics, isn't it? And that kind of resistance that's developed. Do you want to say a bit more about that?
Well, my work initially started with another sort of health crisis that's going on, where our bodies are increasingly becoming resistant to antibiotics because of overuse or misuse of them. So I was trying to sort of raise awareness that we can't really abuse these things, because we're constantly surrounded by these aliens that can invade us very easily. And I was increasingly, whilst during my research, I was increasingly hearing about these reports from China, and I was thinking, surely this is just a huge coincidence. But then it turned into a pandemic, and it almost sort of reinforced my work in a way. But I didn't want my work to become about Corona. Yeah.
Yeah, there's it has to be a sort of intent, a decision or an intent, doesn't it, of either this is something that is about this thing that's happening right now, or it's kind of tying it into the broader issues and wider context.
Yeah, I decided to go with the sort of tying it into broader context kind of using it to reinforce what I was saying. Like, we can't afford to abuse these things that are supposed to help us, otherwise look where we are, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it would be terrible if I said that it couldn't have been better timed, but for my work, it really did help.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That is fair enough. Speaking of this kind of timing, I want to come back to something that you were talking about earlier, Ellen, and that kind of pressure to like realise this perfect work and all this kind of build up to the end of your degree and the degree show. I wonder if you could talk a bit about that and your feeling about that, and I suppose I'm guessing you've all been on quite a roller coaster with that kind of build up and then a bit of an anticlimax of you're not having a degree show.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably all of us can relate to that. I definitely had some, just before the pandemic anyway, I always had some kind of self-confidence issues with my work, and sort of often if I was in like a slump with it, I'd need reassurance, sort of help to kind of realise that my work is going somewhere. And I think I felt that pressure a lot to realise this final perfect show, and to have this work that is kind of a really perfect articulation of what my process has been. And that sort of bled into the work without me realising at first. So I kind of, I actually was looking at the work of Agnes Martin and a lot of her writings, and she wrote a lot about what perfection is to her, or was to her, and that resonated a lot with me, and I started thinking about sort of perfection and the sublime as a concept, not only to make work about that, but to think about my relationship with that as an artist. So that's why I ended up making a piece that it references climbing and sort of mountains and the sublime in that sense, but it also references this kind of personal like journey as an artist to reach this place where every piece of your work is perfect and it represents everything exactly, and thinking that that's kind of a dream, and that being an artist and making work is always about the journey, and you're always creating because of the journey. And definitely the fact that our degree show was stopped was so kind of apt, because after 3 years of thinking you're going to have this end point where you're going to finalize your work, having that not happen, it really tied into the kind of irony of what my work is saying, which is kind of, do you actually get that sublime moment when you're on top of Mount Everest, or is it just that you're literally in the death zone, kind of freezing, and you're up there for 10 minutes and then you need to get down before you sort of die, you know? So it was quite apt. I mean, obviously we had the online degree show, but yeah, it was very different from what I expected, but that did sort of favour my work, definitely.
Is that a shared experience from other artists? I've seen you all nodding, but does anyone want to talk a bit about their feelings about this last few months, and or perhaps that journey?
Yeah, I was gonna moment that you're dreaming about for like the last 3 years, especially the last year, like your focus on like your degree show and like making this like best piece of work that you're gonna like launch into your future with. And I think especially with my work, I had like made it and like taken the photographs, and I kind of just expected it to be like packed away, and like next, like if we were to have a grad show hopefully next year, like it will be like unpacked then. And I think there was a lot of like pressure build up because we were fundraising for our degree show as well, and suddenly like it was all just halted quite dramatically. And I think that transition of going from like your own, like working in a studio to like working at home was, I think, quite a big transition for me. Like, I blessed my parents, I came home and I just like took over our kitchen table. I was like, I'm now working from here for the next 3 months, so like this is now my space. But it was like a big transition to then like have those boundaries of like when you're making work and not just sit there all day every day and just make, because there's kind of everything else in your degree is like rapidly changing. It was like the only stability thing I had. So that was kind of like the same elements of like with Ellen's, like, what do we do now? But I'm really thankful to have this space and have this exhibition and be able to put my work up and kind of be with all these different artists as well. It's been really lovely to get to know everyone as well.
Nice, thanks. Does anyone else want to say anything about that experience? Or
I can go, I don't mind. I personally found lockdown to be really beneficial. Because in my uni we have this room called DDR, and it's like a digital dark room, and we'd literally all go in there and work all the time, but I'd always find myself getting distracted and just sitting there chatting all day. I could literally waste hours chatting, I just could never stop. So going on lockdown like made me really focus on myself and really focus on my work. I did struggle in some bits because I could never work out if I was like ahead or behind people, because sort of when you're in the DDR you could just ask like, oh, where are you in your work and where you are in your project. But being at home, it was sort of quite difficult to sort of ask that over like text and stuff. But I found it really easy to get on and do work, but I did struggle with like photographing and sort of finding the right locations, because with my project I like to have a very specific aesthetic, like Alma's aesthetic's like red and blue, and I kind of want it to be a bit kitsch and a bit tacky. My house is a bit too modern for that, and it just not right. So I sort of had to like
disco.
I didn't really work with what I got, but luckily my neighbours are really chill and they let me use their front garden and their master bedroom as well. So I was quite lucky with that. But I did like overall, I think it really, really helped. And I am like quite glad we went on a lockdown over like the last few months, because even though it was hard, I did like focus and I did like really get everything out and do everything that I wanted to do. Yeah.
Do you mind if I jump in?
Go for it, Maryam.
I think that's quite interesting to hear about how it kind of impacted like your practice for, I guess, the better, Caitlin, and it's presumably also everyone's in their own specific ways. But I think the kind of concept, like, I don't know if you guys remember when I don't know if it was Boris, but one of these guys, nice background, when they were talking about COVID being like the great leveler and how it's kind of put us all on an even plane. We're all kind of going through the same experience, but in different ways. Like the kind of, like the symbols in Emma's film, like the banana bread and whatnot, like there are a certain level of relatable experiences. And I think the shared ground here is that we've all had our degree shows ripped from us. But I think it's also important to note that people do undertake courses of study for very varying reasons. Of course, there's this idyllic notion that each of us go on there to become this like successful, you know, Ellen's kind of concept of this like pinnacle of artistic practice and all of this stuff. But yeah, I think it's just exacerbated the different situations that people are in. And if, you know, for example, with my practice, it became largely about very site-specific stuff to do with concepts and like tropes of the art school and kind of somewhat satirist, whatever, like satirizing it, and then like extreme, like large-scale site-specific installations about the art school. And then when there was like no degree show, or the situation of the art school was no longer there, it's like, what exactly what Ellen was saying, it's like so futile. That was the whole point, was to kind of be like, oh, I'm so ironic, and presenting the art school back to itself. But yeah, I think the common ground absolutely is the fact that we've all lost our degree shows. But I think, yeah, by no means is it the great leveler. Sorry, counter view.
Yeah, no, that's I think a really important point. I am conscious of time, as always, and we've got a question that's come in, so we're going to answer it live, which is from Joanne Bushnell, our wonderful leader, who I think some of you have met. she says, this has been such an interesting talk with lots of overlapping and interconnected themes within the work. Can the artists talk a little about their future plans and aspirations? So I think interesting, actually, following on from Maryam saying that people are doing art degrees for very different reasons. So I wonder if you could each, I'll pick on you one by one. If you could each talk about your future plans and aspirations. Let's kick off with Daniel. Are you ready? Can you unmute?
Hello. So my plans right now, I want to become a portrait artist. That is my aspiration. I want to run my own portrait business, and I will also be taking accountancy training on the side as well, and get a part-time accountancy job in arts administration, so that it can help ease my anxiety over money worries when I don't get regular commissions coming in. It's just another string to my bow to help ease some worries about financial problems, like for the future.
Smart, thank you. Kayleigh, future plans and aspirations.
One of my biggest plan is to carry on the project that is showcased here. I want to get it as finished as I can, and just take loads more photographs and make it a real proper series and have everything behind it. But I'm also wanting to get into digital marketing, but I also always want to carry on with my photography on the side and always having my own series going on.
Great, thank you. Megan.
I want to also carry on my practice, make as much stuff as possible, hopefully sell some pieces, do some commissions maybe, but also I worked as a gallery assistant during my time at uni, and I do want to find a similar kind of role. I want to be involved in sort of the running of galleries, workshops, that kind of stuff. It's just finding that kind of role at the moment is really difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to keep an eye out for that kind of stuff.
Thanks. Caitlin Jackson.
Similar to Megan, I also was kind of hoping to crack into the art career world sort of thing whilst keeping my practice going on the side. But it's just wrong time at the moment, but at least can still make art. So we'll carry on.
Good. Evie?
Yeah, I also want to continue my practice. I think it's different now that you're out of an institution to kind of continue, and I'm quite interested to see the new ways that, like, the different paths that my practice will go in. But it kind of feels like with everything that's happened with coronavirus, you know, originally I was kind of thinking like maybe I'll go and do a master's, or, you know, go and do set things. But now it's made me think a lot differently about how we view our future. And so I'm just quite interested in just focusing on the present at the moment, and working, and kind of how my job, which isn't to do with art, might influence my artwork as well. So yeah, I'm just kind of trying to stay present and not think too much about the future, because yeah, it's kind of uncertain at the moment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, how about Emma?
Yeah, I'm still making lots of work at the moment. Still making films and stuff constantly. Basically just working on art at the moment. A lot of it's actually changed it, because I don't often like be making work that is landscape, because I've always been thinking about the fact that if it's in a gallery space, then I would like it to be like landscape. But now all the films that I've been making are now in portrait mode so that people can watch them on their phones. Things like that has changed a bit because obviously like things are more like accessible digitally. I've just been making like short little films still about stuff. I've been doing I did a teaching English as a foreign language course so that I can, as my side job, teach English online as like an online tutor to people who want to learn English while still being able to do art as well. So yeah, that's my plan of action. Yeah.
Thank you. Maryam, big plans, future aspirations?
I would like to do an MA. I'm quite interested in art theory and philosophy. Also, of course, like practice as well. I'd be keen to study internationally again, perhaps back in Paris, or I'm thinking about like Lebanon or Canada, a couple of options. But at the moment, head down, I'm working full time, gotta get that dollar and see what happens.
Thanks. Caitlin Holford.
Hi, I am going to be starting a master's next Tuesday, and that's going to be at Southampton Solent, and it's in creative direction for fashion and beauty. So I'm going to be going down sort of fashion and beauty side, but I kind of do want to maybe go into the film industry as well. I'm sort of open to anything, and I think I will carry on with Alma. I'm just sort of taking a break right now because it was very stressful and I needed like a break and a holiday. So I think I might start looking back at inspiration and sort of getting more ideas to shoot with her more. But so far I needed a break. I need to stop before I have like a mental breakdown or something. But yeah, so yeah, that's it.
That's very allowed. Louise.
Yeah, so I'm currently working at actually my uni I've just graduated from. So that's quite good because I'm still able to use all their facilities and their print room. And then my plan is to kind of go on to an MA next year in Black British history, and then go into like arts education and academia and hopefully become a lecturer in higher education. So that's my plan. Fingers crossed it works out.
Very clear plan. Impressive. Ellen, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'd like to carry on kind of reading about contemporary art and sort of reading about the subjects that I'm interested in and keep up my practice, but also just kind of see where like working life takes me. And at the moment, like everyone's been saying, it's hard to get that sort of ideal creative job, but I'm kind of trying to like find creative notches in whatever job I'm doing, to sort of feel like my skills are being utilized, and I think that really helps. But similar to what Evie was saying, the future is kind of, when you overthink it too much, it becomes a bit of a scary prospect. So I'm trying not to overthink about where I might be in the future in terms of a career, but just like focusing on the now and trying to sort of be happy with where I'm at. Yeah.
Great. And last but not least, Chloe.
Yeah, so I've been trying to push myself as much as I can as I finish my studies. I have a part-time job which is not art related, and it's working with children. I think in the future I'd love to do art therapy, looking at how therapeutic art is. But at the moment I'm still pushing doing my lovely ladies. I've got a few commissions from people, and I'm also looking at like more online and how to get people involved that I probably wouldn't have known, but as my following is getting bigger and bigger and I'm more involved in like body positivity and normalizing normal bodies and that kind of community, I'm actually getting people asking if I could paint them, which is really great. So yeah, that's just continuing and trying to do like prints on Etsy. So yeah, I'm just riding the wave and seeing how that goes.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Now, I promised that you could all ask each other questions, but it's 28 minutes past 8 and I said we'd wrap up within an hour and a half. So is there anything burning and desperate? And Louise, I don't think this is the time for the dinner party question. If anyone had anything really urgent that you wanted to ask, you can. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up. No? Okay, I'm going to wrap it up in that case. Thank you all so much for being part of this, both in terms of the exhibition, but particularly this evening on Zoom. The Platform Graduate Award is an initiative led by Siân Southeast, and as part of the wider project, Aspex will be nominating one artist who will be shortlisted for the Platform Graduate Award, which is a prize of £2,000 and a year of mentoring. I am not about to announce who that is, so get your hopes down. But the winner will then be selected by a panel of representatives from the 4 galleries, which are Aspex, Turner Contemporary, Modern Art Oxford and Phoenix Art Space Brighton, along with a guest judge, which this year is Turner Prize winner Tai Shani, which is amazing for her to be involved. So that winner will be announced in December. I'm afraid you're going to have to wait till then. I think we should also give one of those amazing Zoom reaction. Oh no, we can't do it. Oh, I thought we were going to be able to do one of those clap things, but we can't. Maybe just an actual clap. To all of your lecturers, friends, families, partners who have helped you make this happen. I've met some of them. They've been coming in, helping with installing, and giving you studio space in your homes. And I'm sure that we all need to thank them very much for being so brilliant and supportive. I want to end very positively and say congratulations to all of you. You've worked really hard on getting your work ready for the show in really difficult circumstances, and we at Aspex want to wish you all the very best of luck with those future aspirations and plans for your future careers. You're all brilliant, you're all amazing. It's super important to keep going, to keep making your work. You've come through some pretty difficult times and you've achieved some amazing stuff. So you're going to be super brilliant, resilient, interesting artists, and we're excited to see what happens. So stay in touch, be part of the Platform Alumni Network. Thank you all very much. And I'm going to stop broadcasting in a moment, and I've still not mastered this thing of like stopping it or just completely ending it and everybody disappears. So who knows what's going to happen. We've got a chat coming through saying well done. I'm going to press stop and see whether it just ends or if we can keep chatting and say goodbye. But let's all like wave or something.